But if someone has set a price for the product they've created, then I think it's the same as going into your local yarn shop and just taking a book or taking a few skeins of yarn and walking out of the store. You're still hurting a small business. Hi, my name's Mark and welcome to the channel. Today I'm coming to you with a video that I usually try to avoid. I try not to say anything that's too negative or too pointedly opinionated here on the channel, but there's something trending right now, which is to share your knitting or crochet, your crafting hot takes. So I've collected a pretty short list of my opinions, things that sort of get under my skin when I hear other crafters say them all the time. So if you'd like to join me for a little bit of crafting and conversation, stick around and let's get into these hot takes. So I'll preface this by again saying I usually don't like to get into things that are negative at all. I really don't want to bring negativity to this channel. I know sometimes I have a story to tell or something to vent about, but I still try to do it in a way where I'm not pointing a finger directly at someone. I don't want to hurt someone else's business or someone else's reputation with the things that I have to say. So if I ever have a sort of negative opinion or something that I feel is a little too snarky, a little too salty, I try to at least tell it in a way that feels somewhat balanced, and I try to never point directly to their identity because, again, I never know how many people are going to watch these videos. Sometimes I get a couple of thousand views on a video. Other times something takes off and it might get 50,000 or 100,000 views. So I'm not trying to be the bad guy. I don't want to be villainous, but this is the channel I created to talk about things and share what's going on in my life. So sometimes that's a story, that's an experience, and other times it's just a place where I want to sit down with you and feel like we are in our own crafting group, which I think is the feel a lot of people get from watching these videos. I've met several of you in person or talked with you through messages you sent, and that's my favorite part of this whole thing. So today in our little virtual crafting world, crafting group, I wanted to share some of my hot takes. So if you're not familiar, people are defining these hot takes as your opinions that might feel, I don't know, like they go against what the norm is. So I'll start with my first hot take, which is about fiber. Now, one of my other takes that I'll get to is about minding your own business, and that's all true. So remember the caveats I just shared. This is my channel to just talk about my opinions. I'm not trying to attack anyone out there. So if your hot takes, if your opinions are completely different from mine, that's great. I think that's good. It makes this a balanced community. And I'd love to hear yours in the comments, or if you feel like writing me a message, please do. So let's talk about fiber. When I started knitting, it was almost 8 years ago now, and I didn't know really anything about fiber, anything specific about yarn. I didn't even know about the different weights, the different categories of how light or heavy your fiber is, and that you should be using a different needle or hook size depending on how heavy or light your fiber is. I had no clue of any of this. So I jumped in with a little bit of yarn. I'm sure it was acrylic yarn and needles, and I'm sure I was just guessing. I didn't really inspect the yarn enough to see that, oh, there's a recommended range of needle sizes to use. But anyway, I learned to knit. I made my first project. It was all fine. And it wasn't until I had been knitting for closer to a year, and I had an actual knitting group that I attended. And once I had a community of people to visit with, to ask questions, to use as a sounding board, it made such a difference in my knowledge of fiber and fiber arts, but also in my own opinion and my own taste. Just learning about the options that are out there, the different places to find patterns, the different types of fiber you can use, the general cost and to know where's the best place to buy these things and find these supplies and what is a good combination. What do you want to use certain fibers for? All of that. It helped shape my own aspirations of what I wanted to be making, what I wanted to learn how to do in the long run. Fast forward to now, I work at a local yarn shop to me, and it's been the best experience for me to really learn more than I ever thought I would know about fiber arts. So at this yarn shop, I'm exposed to a huge range of fiber, of different brands, of different makers, different dyers, everything from acrylics to cashmere to silk. I mean, it's just everything, and at every price point. So it really is, I don't know, I feel like I'm in a museum or a classroom where I'm able to touch all of the fiber. I don't rub it on my face, but I do feel it, and just get an idea of why one fiber is different from the next, why certain things might be priced differently, and why people choose to use certain things again and again. So in addition to having access to all this beautiful fiber that comes through the shop, I also see a lot of projects that people are working on. At Around the Table Yarns in Shaker Heights, where I work, one of their tenets of creating a shop was to help people succeed in their crafting. So we offer beginner classes every month. There's always, beginner, and then advanced beginner, and then lots of advanced technique classes. There's always stuff going on. But then the principle of Around the Table is that they're open 7 days a week, and you are always welcome to come in without an appointment and get some help. So there's a big table up front. There's always a teacher on duty that can help you with knitting or crochet or Tunisian crochet. And I think it's a great system. The whole point of it is that if you are interested in crafting, in fiber arts, that they are there to help you succeed. And that's the end goal. We don't want you to put your project down because you get frustrated or are making mistakes, or maybe part of the technique hasn't sunk in yet. So we're there to make sure you're on the right track and you can successfully finish a project and hopefully be excited about crafting for years and years to come. So all of that to say, I see a lot of people's projects, and I also get to see what people come in and want to buy, the things that they like, the things they're attracted to. So the first hot take, which again is not an attack on anybody who says what I'm about to say, but for me, sometimes it does puzzle me, and I hear it all the time. So I don't love when people say, I can't use wool, it's way too scratchy. I can't wear wool, I don't want wool, it's itchy. It doesn't feel good, it's not soft. So, of course, there are scratchy, itchy, more unpleasant feeling wools out there in the world. And especially if you're someone who says that, who maybe was looking at options of wool that you could buy 50 years ago, 60 years ago, that might have been a true scenario for you, that all of them were too itchy and it wasn't worth making that project and then trying to wear it against the skin. However, I think in today's world, in today's market, at least the options I see when I'm at my local shop or when I'm shopping elsewhere, there are so many wools, and I'm talking 100% non-superwash, so not treated with any plastic coating to make it superwash. They're soft. And especially when you block them, when you soak them, when you use a wool wash, when you start actually wearing them, they get softer and softer. And a lot of the wool that I like to use, Scout from Kelborn Woolens, Woolstock from Blue Sky Fibers, those are two of the sort of workhorse 100% non-superwash wools that are carried at the local shop, which is why I'm always using them for projects. They feel buttery. They feel so smooth. They show stitch definition beautifully. They hold up well. There's pilling. There's pilling with everything I make. I've never made anything that hasn't pilled because I'm making things at a decently loose gauge. I'm wearing everything I make. My arm rubs against my body. I'm working in the sweaters. I'm traveling in the sweaters. They're getting a lot of use, and so I shave them down and I take care of the pilling. But anyway, these wools are soft. Now, I also have in my life some wool that I purchased on my travels that feels more toothy, things that are not so smooth to the touch. So I totally get it. There are certain things, certain fibers, certain wools that I wouldn't choose over others, especially if I knew it was something that I was going to be wearing right against the skin. I've never used Icelandic wool, so I really can't speak to it, but I've heard that a lot of people that use Icelandic wool from those sheep will wear something between their skin and the sweater. So they'll really wear it as an outer layer. And there are different properties to these different breeds of sheep that make the feel of the wool softer or maybe a little more toothy, and it provides other things. It might help keep the wind out. It might help keep water off of you. So there are reasons why the sheep have grown and evolved into having the feel of the wool. And then, of course, when that gets spun into fiber or blended with other things to make the yarn that we can buy in the stores around us, you get a huge range of feel. So that's just non-superwash. If you feel superwash merino wool, I know it's been treated. I know some people are really not fans of that process. So that's fine too. That can be one of your hot takes, that you don't want to use superwash merino. And no judgment from me, period. That wool feels just like, well, I don't want to say it feels just like an acrylic, but for someone who thinks an acrylic is the only soft option out there, a superwash merino is going to knock it out of the park. It's going to feel way better. So I always get a little sad. it makes me sad for anyone who has not tried using wool, either non-superwash or some superwash merino. If they've never tried it, if you've never made a project with it, and then you say, oh, I can't wear wool, it irritates my skin, it's too scratchy, give it a try. If you have a store, if you're traveling and you're going to go to a store, feel everything. Really spend time. Don't rub it on your face, but do spend time feeling the fiber. Look at the labels and see, is it a non-superwash wool? Is it a superwash merino? Is it a blend of something? There are lots of wool and cotton blends. There are lots of fibers that are some portion of synthetic material with a portion of wool. So there are just so many things out there. And I should say here, some people have wool allergies. And if you have a wool allergy, a legitimate allergy that means you can't wear it or handle it, don't buy wool, obviously. So if that's not you, and you just feel like for whatever reason, the sweater your great grandmother gave you years and years ago was so scratchy and stiff you didn't like wearing it, maybe give it a try now with the current market of wool options. So that's my first hot take. I love wool. I like working with natural fibers when I can. Of course, one reason I can do that is because I work at a local shop. So I have access to things. It makes it a little more affordable for me to do. So I totally understand if you're not choosing a natural fiber because of the cost. And that's a different thing. Just, I think the feel of it, when people say, I can't wear it, I don't want it, it's scratchy, go try it. Go try it and give it a chance, because you might be blown away. All right, now for the second hot take. This one is something that I saw happening in the last month-ish, and when I first noticed it, oh my gosh, it made my blood boil. It made me so upset to the point where I thought I should sit down and I should make a video about it, because again, sometimes the videos I make reach a lot of people, and I feel like then it's a good opportunity for me to say something that might help impact, I don't know, anybody out there in a positive way, or it might help shape a conversation by putting my 2 cents out into the world of YouTube. So this hot take is that I don't think people should ever steal patterns. And you may be familiar with what was going on in the last month. I'll get into it in a couple of minutes, but I'll start by saying there are so many patterns for knitting and crochet, Tunisian crochet, I'm sure across all crafting, but I'm most familiar with handcrafted fiber arts things. There are so many patterns, millions of patterns out there that are free. They're free to download. They're free everywhere. They're free on someone's YouTube channel. They're free on a blog. They're free written out in an actual PDF that you can just download and make. And that's that. You can make probably anything you ever want to make, blankets, scarves, hats, sweaters, anything, from free patterns. And a lot of those free patterns are coming from reputable design companies, from yarn companies, from independent designers. A lot of people choose to make their work absolutely 100% accessible by just putting it out there for free. So, with all of those free patterns to work, I don't understand why people think it's okay or why they would encourage others to steal or redistribute copywritten paid patterns. Now, you may be someone who's never purchased a pattern. I had never purchased a pattern probably until I started working at my local yarn shop. Because again, when I started my crafting journey, I didn't really know what was out there. I didn't know about the world of pattern design and that a lot of people purchase their patterns online. I was thinking you still find a pattern in a book, which you still can. People still publish books. There are so many great patterns in more historic books now. But I just didn't know that you could pull out your phone, go to a certain website, and search through a million patterns and then choose what you want and either download it for free or pay for it if it's a paid pattern. So once I learned about all of this and I was opened up into this world of, I guess, sort of modern pattern design, then I started buying patterns. And the first 5 or 10 projects where I purchased a pattern, I did hesitate. I thought, do I really want to spend $6, an additional $6 after spending the money on my yarn and my other supplies to buy a pattern? Or sometimes $10, maybe $12. I don't think I've ever spent more than $12 on a pattern. Usually I'm spending $6, $8, maybe $10 if it's a big sweater project. And I hesitated at first. I thought, oh, that feels a little, I don't know, excessive that after I buy my yarn and I have all my supplies ready, I have to spend more money on a piece of paper. But that's because it was new to me. I didn't understand that it's another part. The person I'm buying that piece of paper from is a designer, someone who has created a career. They've built enough of a career that somehow I found their pattern. And ideally, the pattern I'm buying has been thoroughly checked. It's been carefully designed. It's been tested by the designer along the way. Maybe it's been tech edited. Maybe it's been graded into several sizes. And there are probably useful things that come with that pattern, like pictures of what the finished object will look like. There are probably other people out there who have made it, who've already weighed in with anything they found to be tricky or difficult, or just sharing their experience, which gives me even more know-how and, I don't know, it gives me foresight into the project to see how everyone else enjoyed it, or if they didn't enjoy it, it helps me know that maybe I don't want to buy that pattern, and maybe it's not the first thing I want to do. Maybe I'll wait until I'm a little more experienced to figure out why there were challenges in it. So with all of those things included, then the idea of paying $6 starts to make a lot more sense. So that was my initial hiccup, just not really having context for why am I buying a pattern? Why isn't it free? And then I realized, oh, it's because there's an actual person, someone like me now, who's sitting here knitting away, who took the time to either come up with something new and creative or rework something that already exists, but maybe with a better technique or a different design element. And for whatever reason, it was lucrative enough. It was attractive, special enough for people to want to purchase it or want to download it and work the pattern. So it's not like the patterns that people are stealing or wanting for free are lousy patterns or things that are so simple that you could just make it without a pattern. If that were the case, there would be no reason to steal a pattern. So that was too much exposition, but what's been going on is this conversation. I saw it on TikTok, but I'm sure it's happening everywhere, on Instagram, on Facebook, in people's group chats, on Reddit, anywhere people are talking. And there were people complaining specifically about the Sophie scarf. And I've made 4, I'm on my 5th Sophie scarf. I'm making a Sophie hood. And this is a pattern from Petite Knit. If you're not familiar, I'll put it up on the screen. The Sophie scarf is a very simple kerchief, and it's stylish, it's popular. Again, there would be no desire for people to steal this pattern or desire it for free if it weren't something they thought was worth making. Also, if it were so simple that you could just glance at it and make it yourself, you could just make it yourself. And I know there are plenty of people who choose not to buy patterns because they like to reverse engineer. They like to look at the picture and figure out what the color work or texture pattern is, what the design elements are, and then just rework them on their own. And you can do that. You can always do that. But the people wanting to steal the pattern, wanting it for free, thinking this should be given out. There's no reason that the designer at Petite Knit should be expecting money for this. And I just had a big issue with that thought process. Again, if it's so easy that you can make it without any need for a pattern, then go for it. You can make it without a pattern. But if you would like to know what technique is used to create the I-cord edge, if you'd like to know the rate of increases, if you'd like to know what, you already know the weight of yarn and the size of needle from sort of the preview of the pattern on Ravelry. But if you want to know everything that the designer knows from their trial and error, then you want the pattern. And if it is too much for you to purchase, or you have a reason why you just can't stomach paying for the pattern, well, then it's at that point, I think it's off limits. It's out of bounds. And until maybe you save up and think, yes, I want to spend the money on it, or you come to the conclusion that, yes, it's worth buying a pattern, then at that point, you can buy the pattern and you've got it. So this conversation started where all of these people were ragging on the idea that someone is charging for a pattern that they've created and written and edited and photographed, and also something that they take time to continually check and continually translate into more languages. All of these patterns, everything I've ever bought on Ravelry, I get updates occasionally. If there's ever a correction or an addendum to maybe better explain a technique or add another option for a design feature, or even if something has now been translated into another language, I get a little notification and it says an update has been made to this pattern, and then it briefly tells me that nothing has changed with the design and it's just in another language, or they'll tell me that there's an error that's been fixed. And so then I know I can go re-download that pattern. If I've already made it, then maybe it explains why there was a miscount somewhere or some sort of issue. But anyway, the pattern is not finished when it is first put out into the world. I think most reputable designers that really make their careers designing for handcrafts, they're continually reinvesting in those patterns. It's not forgotten. It's not on the shelf, out of sight, out of mind. People are still buying it. People are still making it. People are still sharing those projects with the world. So if something is wrong and if you reach out, the designers or someone on their editing team usually does make that change or get back to you. I'm already fired up and I get so rambly, so I'll try to wrap that part up. The situation is that there are enough people talking about why a certain popular pattern should be free, and then because it's not free, they decided it would be better to share the pattern with everyone they know. So one person had a copy, and then that one person is emailing it to everyone who asks. And then they thought an even better idea would be if we just make a group where as many of us who want to join can join, and we'll share every pattern we've ever purchased. So for me, if I have, I don't know, 40 or 50 patterns that I've ever purchased in my Ravelry library, those are all of the sweaters I've made, those are all of the hats or gloves that I've wanted to make, and maybe a couple patterns that I haven't made yet, that I purchased and then decided I wasn't ready to make and put on hold. And these people have taken everything in their library and shared it so that hundreds of people can just click and download everything, which, yes, all of those people are not going to end up making all of those patterns, but you've just violated the copyright on every pattern that you've paid for. It says at the bottom of every pattern I purchased that it's copyrighted material, that you can't redistribute it. You can't just share it. You can't print a million copies and give them away for free. The idea is that the pattern, the intellectual content is protected. And that's just what it is. And if somebody has a qualm with buying a pattern, if you think it's a ripoff, if you don't want to be spending your money on that content, then you don't have to. But I don't think it's fair to then obtain it illegally. So this was happening. There was a huge Discord group created just for sharing every pattern people own. And these people were talking about it so freely on TikTok, on Instagram, on Reddit. And I was seeing it. People who designed, the designers themselves who are being stolen from, they were seeing it. And I just thought it was crazy. Now, you may be watching this and you may think, I don't know, you may think it's appropriate to exchange all the patterns you own. You may think it's appropriate to redistribute the copyrighted material. You may think it's okay to obtain the patterns without paying. But if someone has set a price for the product they've created, then I think it's the same as going into your local yarn shop and just taking a book or taking a few skeins of yarn and walking out of the store. You're still hurting a small business. And then here's the line where the people who created this Discord, they were saying with Petite Knit, she is a hugely popular designer. And if you look at the number of people who have worked her patterns and purchased her patterns, you can do the math and realize that that's a very large amount of money. But we don't know how much money she's spending on all of the elements, all of the things that go into designing the patterns, having things tech edited, having things photographed, taking the time to write the pattern, to make all of your mock-ups, your samples. And then, of course, she has a life to live. She has her own life, her own family, her own business. It's the same as anyone else working at their job and expecting to be paid. So I don't think that in 2025, there should be any question about people being fairly compensated and having their work, their hard work, protected. I just think that's a no-brainer. So it made me so upset. I was so shocked, first of all, to see everyone so publicly encouraging each other to steal and redistribute, to share all of these patterns. I just thought it was crazy. If you're someone who likes to work from patterns that you trust from a designer, and that designer is charging a fee for the pattern, you're already spending money on yarn, you're already spending money on whatever other supplies and materials you need. So I think you should build in the cost of a pattern. Sometimes it's $4, sometimes it's $6 or $7, sometimes it's $10 or $12. Honestly, I think it's rarely ever more than $10 or $12 for a single pattern. And oftentimes designers offer sales. They offer birthday sales where all of their patterns are 25% off, 40% off, 50% off. Some of them do a bundle. If you buy 3 patterns, you save 30%. Sometimes there are books. You could buy a book from a designer that might have 5 or 6 things in it that you want to make, and maybe your book was $20 or $25, but you got 6 patterns out of it or 10 patterns out of it, and it made it seem like a better investment for you. I don't want to feel like I'm yelling at you or being angry, but really either side of the conversation you fall on, I think the things I'm saying are sort of the cut and dry. Someone has put in the work to create a product and they expect to be fairly compensated. And it's up to them, the compensation rate. And so if it's too expensive and you think it's not worth it, then I don't think you need to buy the pattern. I think you can move on from it and look for something that's similar and maybe free, or you can figure it out on your own. There's so many options. And so this hot take is not a judgment on people that prefer to work free patterns. Not at all. This hot take is just on the idea of stealing a pattern. All right, I've already sat for too long getting worked up about, I don't know, the own issues going on just in my head. So I have two more hot takes. The next one is the people who don't like anything that's popular. And this may be you. I mean, I see this all the time. So I'm sure a number of the people watching this video will fall into one of the categories of hot takes. And again, I'm not trying to attack you. I think we should both be here in this crafting group. I want us to have some balance. So again, tell me in the comments without yelling at me, because I'm trying not to yell at you, what your hot takes are. And your hot takes might be everything that I like to do. So this next one is people who don't like something just because it's popular. I totally understand when something is popular, when it's the thing that everyone's making, if you legitimately don't like it because it's not functional for you, that's fine. If you don't like it because it's not your style, maybe you don't like the construction that designer does, then I think that's a legitimate reason not to like it. I'm sorry, I have to pause for a moment because my eyes are like twitching out and I feel like I'm going to look wild in this video. So to recap that, if the reason you don't like the trending popular pattern is because you don't like the design, you don't like the construction of it, I think those are absolutely legitimate reasons that you would not ever want to make it. But if the reason you hate the Sophie scarf, let's say, because we're already talking about it, is because everyone else loves it, it just exhausts me. So sometimes a pattern is totally normal. There's nothing weird about it. I mean, it's just a functional whatever, functional sweater with nice construction, or, you know, a clever design for a shawl with a really beautiful lace work or really beautiful cable, I don't know, color work, slip stitch. And because it's popular, I'll see so many people in comments all over the internet say, you know, well, the only reason people like that is because that designer's sending it to everyone for free, to sending it to influencers so that people think it's popular. And I just sit back and I think, do you really think that's true? That's the only reason that, you know, thousands of people or tens of thousands of people are making this project, is because they're being influenced? Sure, having somebody throw a pattern at you over and over again on social media puts it in your brain and it might influence you a little bit, but I think the patterns that typically rise to the top and stay there as these really popular staples of knitted or crocheted or Tunisian crocheted items, they're there for a reason. They're there because, I don't know, they match the current trends. They look like something people want to wear and want to make. So I just get annoyed when I see people who try to explain, you know, why something is popular. Well, I think things are typically popular because they are aesthetically pleasing. Maybe they're constructed really well. Maybe they're really innovative. Maybe it's really, really fun and engaging to make it. The actual technique of creating it is addictive. It's really fun. And so when I see people say, well, you know, the only reason people are making that is because so and so mentioned it on their YouTube channel. I don't know. I don't think somebody with a YouTube channel has that much power to brainwash everybody into making something that's not worth making on its own, you know, on its own merit. So that's that hot take. It's brief, but I do always kind of question when I see people ragging on what everybody else is making, if they have a real reason. If the comment reads, I don't understand why everybody is making blank, because I would never want a garment that fits like that. Ding, ding, ding. I think that's the best way to state your opinion and argument, because you've given us your take on it, and then the concrete reason why you're not interested. And then I think it points it out for other people that might take a step back and look and think, oh, you're right. The fit of that looks really awkward or really uncomfortable. So I think that's the most productive way to share a hot take, to give us a little context and state why. Otherwise, when people just say, oh, I don't know why people are making that, I wonder why. Why do you think that? Tell us. So that's that. I'll say a quick aside here. My mentor Peg, and I don't want to like put a spotlight on her for her own sake, but she's incredible. She's an incredible fiber artist. Everything she makes is like top tier, the most beautiful finishing, the most beautiful execution. She designs her own things and then also makes a lot of things that other people have designed and published. So when she shares her opinions on patterns or projects or yarn with me, she always gives such a quick and succinct, concrete reason why. So if we're talking about a pattern or I'm asking for her input on a technique that I haven't done before, or maybe the finishing of something, she will have a quick, clear answer, and she always gives me the reason why. And it's not to say that I have to agree with everything she says, but as an emerging crafter, someone who's only been making garments for the last few years and only knitting for less than 10, I really like to lean on the mentors, the teachers in my life. I think it's great to seek out their advice, their opinion on things. And again, you don't have to agree with what your teachers and mentors and friends say, but I think it can be really nice to have someone else weigh in. So I always appreciate that Peg has a concrete reason. She's not just bashing something. She's not just on the other side of an opinion to be on the other side. It's because of something specific, like the construction of a garment or the fit of something or the way it's created and its longevity. So the more I hear from her, the more it helps me form my taste and what I'm looking for in patterns and future projects, which I think is invaluable. So if you have someone in your life like that, take advantage of it. I think it's wonderful to be able to define what about a project makes it sing for you and what you like to avoid, just to make your own crafting happier and more successful with every project you do. And my final hot take for today's video is I don't like mean crafters. Now, I like to think that I'm nice, but you're always the villain in someone's story. So I might be the villain in your story. And if so, it is what it is. Just kidding. That's what a villain would say. If so, I'm sorry. I don't want to be your villain. But really, you are always the villain in someone's story. So I like to think that I'm nice. I really try to be careful when I come on to any public platform, whether that's at my local yarn shop, when I'm talking to people. I try to make sure that I'm being kind, that I'm being thoughtful, that I'm sharing things that are appropriate to share. And I, of course, try to do the same thing here on the YouTube channel. So this hot take is that I just don't appreciate and sometimes don't understand mean crafters. You can interpret this a million ways. I had someone write to me once after I shared a video where I talk about, I don't remember what video it was, but sort of sensitive topics. And I tried to carefully talk about the topics, and this viewer said something like, "Oh, I really appreciate the delicacy you used in handling this topic." And then they asked me, they said, "Could I request a video where you talk about why some knitters don't like crocheters or look down on people who crochet?" And I thought, that's a really good topic, and it's something that's been on my list for a long time. I don't think I'm the best equipped person to talk about it, so I haven't talked about it. But that's one example, one pocket of what I mean by mean crafters. I have heard from knitters, not really the people in my own community, but people in other shops, other places I've lived, where people say sort of scathing, ugly things about people who crochet. And I'm like, whoa, you're sitting there knitting. What's wrong with somebody crocheting? Like, then do we go over to somebody who doesn't do fiber arts at all and wants to pass a big, ugly judgment on anybody who spends their time crafting? Like, what are we doing? I just don't understand. And then, of course, there are people, like I was saying in the previous hot take, people who go against the grain and just want to bash whatever's popular. That falls under the mean crafters category of sitting around, I don't know, entertaining yourself by harping on how awful you think everyone else is. It's like, I know we all need to vent. And sometimes I vent here on the channel, as previously stated. But I like to remind myself that this is a community. And even if you feel like you don't have your own crafting community, if you step foot into a crafting related store, if you share words online in a comment, if you are talking in person with someone else in your life who crafts, even if you don't really know they do, if you don't know everything about them, then you are opening yourself up into that crafting community. And if the things you say are filled with hate or really harsh judgment, I think it poisons the community a little bit, or a bit. I just don't think it's needed. Now, there's a line between your venting and where it turns into a party on bashing someone or something. And I'm not in charge of anything. I hold no special office. I'm not the king of knitting. I wish I were the king of knitting. It just sounds fun. But I'm not. I'm nobody. And all of this in the video, I mean, none of it is a rule that anyone needs to abide by. Some of it is kind of hopeful suggestion that I would appreciate if somebody watches a video of mine and they think, Mark's right. I should be more positive, or I should try to, contribute to my own crafting community, or start a knitting group, or whatever it is. Things like that make me so happy to think, yes, there's a lot of positivity being spread. But I'm not in charge of anything, as we all know. So I had someone comment on my gift knitting video that I posted a few weeks ago. And I knew, or I had a feeling, that a lot of people would have strong opinions about gift knitting. And I loved reading the comments. There were so many people that kind of were continuing the exact conversation that was running through my mind. And then there were other people that challenged parts of what I said, which I also love to see, because again, I want the person sitting across from me in this knitting or crochet circle to be a balanced opinion. I don't want to hang out with a group of me. I want to hang out with you. So I loved the conversations on that video. But there was one person out of 1,000 that said, who are you? Who are you to tell me I shouldn't gift knit? And I said, did you watch the video? I didn't say that, but in my mind I said, did you watch the video? In the video I say, it's not my place to tell you that you should or shouldn't. I was just there to spark a conversation and talk about being taken advantage of if you feel like everybody expects gifts, or I don't know, making sure that you're finding joy in it, making sure that you're giving gifts that will be appreciated and loved. Anyway, if you watch the video, you already know. But one person out of 1,000 comments and says, well, who are you? I'm Mark. We know that. I'm here. But I don't have any authority. You don't need to change what you're doing because of me. So I appreciate you joining me for these hot takes. I hope that I haven't been too nasty in the video. I hope that I haven't lost too many friends here today. But I just wanted to share the few things that always make me turn my head a little bit. And I think, well, why? So the takeaway is, if you always work with one type of fiber, go try another if you can, if you have access to it. Just give another fiber a try. Use something special, something new to you, and you'll probably enjoy it. Don't steal people's patterns, just because I think that's kind of yucky. I think it's pretty yucky, certifiably yucky. And then the last takeaway, don't be a hateful crafter. You don't want to fill the projects you're making with hate. You don't want to infuse hate into the community around you. And even if you feel like you are sort of walled up in your own fortress, if you're leaving comments on the internet, anywhere, people are reading them. And if they're really hateful, judgy comments, you could be hurting someone, or you could just be contributing a little more sourness into the community. So you don't always have to be happy go lucky. You don't have to love everything. But if you have a criticism, try to make it concrete. Try to give the reason why. And then it'll probably help other people and you'll build up the community. So I think that's it for today. Thanks for joining me for a conversation. Thanks for crafting with me if you were able to do that. I've got some finished projects coming up on the channel soon. I have 3 or 4 sweaters on the needles that hopefully will be coming off the needles in the next month, and lots of other stuff going on. So it's always great to sit down and spend some time with you. Thanks for choosing to be here on the channel with me. As always, happy knitting, happy crocheting, happy crafting to you, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye.